Right, today's story then, we're going to go back to about 1955. Wow, that's a long time ago. I was 11 years old. We were living at a place called Wrangle, just north of Boston in Lincolnshire. And my father and mother had taken on a pub. Now, those of you not living in England, a pub is like an auberge, except people don't sleep there. All right, it's a pub. It's food, drink, that kind of thing. Strict licensing laws in England in those days, so you can only open the pub at certain hours in the morning, lunchtime-ish, and then in the evening. It was something different. All right, we'd moved from Boston, and my grandmother Munford, I suppose this is how they got the money to actually provide the ingoing, because when you become the tenant of a pub, you have to provide an ingoing. You have to put up a lump sum, and then you have to pay also for the stock which is there at the pub, which will be at your disposal. So grandmother Munford had left her house in Harrogate, and 22 Bilgrove Avenue had been sold. And that would obviously have provided the money for the ingoing of the coach and horses at Wrangle, a roadhouse. It was a Soames house. Soames or Stewart and Patterson's. I think it was Soames to begin with. They were brewers in Spalding. And then it was Stewart and Patterson's afterwards. But I do believe it was Soames at this time. And I was just starting at Boston Grammar School just past 11 plus, and I was in the first year. My father kept on his job, a good job he did, because the time at the pub was actually not too long. And he was the telephone salesman for the Peterborough telephone area for the GPO telephones. If you wanted a telephone, you had to see him. Even in 1955, there weren't many telephones. Lots of shared lines. Not long after the war, 10 years or so after the war was over. And so things were still, I think rationing had only just stopped. Or the final lot of rationing, food rationing and things like that just stopped. So things weren't very available. So he was the telephone sales chap. We had this pub. Mother was quite good at that kind of thing. She loved entertaining people, but she wasn't very good at balancing the books. Because my father was still the telephone salesman, then I had responsibilities at the pub. My sister was a lot younger than me. She was still a kid, very young. She's 5 years younger than me, so yeah, she'd barely be at school. So my responsibility was keeping the shelves stocked up, with bottled beer and soft drinks and that kind of thing. So at the end of school, then when I got home, by the way, it had a good pull-in. The coach and horses had a big, wide pull-in off the main road. It was on the main road from Boston to Skegness, Wrangle. Very twisty, windy road, that is. Still is, I think. And so I was on the school bus, and I was the first person to get on the school bus in the morning at about 7:45. Arrived in Boston about 9:15, and I was the last person to get off at about 5:15. I think it left Boston at about 4:30, 4:15, something like that. School stopped, I think, at 4 o'clock. It used to leave Boston from outside Lovely's, the bakers, in the marketplace, and I used to use some pocket money, if I could find some, to buy a sticky bun to eat on the way home. So there we are, we're living at Wrangle. I was filling up the shelves and things. I was also more or less in charge of the cellar, 10, 11 years old, but I'd learnt, my father had shown me what to do. I used to clean the pipes every weekend. Caustic soda, hot caustic soda, pump out the pipes, rinse them well, because the beer pipes, it's the beer engines, the pipes come straight from a barrel. No, none of this fizzy stuff like you get nowadays. A proper wooden beer barrel. It had to be tapped properly as well in sufficient time before you used it. That was my job as well. It's incredible, isn't it? So I used to tap the beer barrels, I washed the the beer engine pipes. I kept the shelves stocked up, and at some time or other I did some homework. Oh, also in the summertime we had a shop, because there's buses going to Skegness, you know, from to the coast, buses and buses and buses, and they used to stop and for a drink, obviously, and toilets and that kind of thing. And I had a little wooden shop in the car park. I was very good at mental arithmetic, and it was my responsibility. So, hello, I've lost the light on my face, but never mind. We sell pop and crisps and sweets and swizzle sweets and refreshers and all that kind of thing, and the odd Mars bar and pork pies and all that kind of thing. So I became very good at mental arithmetic, and it did help my maths, but not trigonometry and geometry, obviously. So there we are. Now, the winter, I think it was the winter of 55, there was some industrial dispute somewhere down the line, whether it was lorry drivers for the pub or lorry drivers for the brewery or lorry drivers generally. I can't quite remember exactly, but we couldn't get our beer. Now, a pub with no beer is a bit serious. So my father spoke to the brewery, and they said, yeah, we can come and get what you want, but we can't deliver it. So across the road from us, we were surrounded by farmers, you know, and quite close to us are some produce merchants. There was Fred Swain and Tom Stedman had a produce business just across the road from us. Their yard was in Fred Swain's yard, diagonally across the road, and Dad borrowed a lorry. It was an old Bedford with a long nose. I'll find a picture of it. Petrol engine. 1940s. Yeah, well, we're only in the 50s, aren't we? So I went with him, and we went off to Spalding to collect enough beer to keep us going for a couple of weeks. So I do remember trundling off in this lorry. He was driving it. I mean, in those days he had a car licence. I don't suppose you needed anything more to drive a lorry. My mother hadn't got a licence at all, and she drove a car. She could drive anything. So off we went to Spalding, and we went to the brewery. I'll find a picture of it here somewhere. We pulled into the brewery, got loaded up with beer. I can't remember any particular problems of any sort. With regard to what do you call these folks that stand at the gate? Picket lines, that's it. No, I can't remember anything like that. So, and we poddled off home. So I helped him unload this beer, the barrels, of course, at the back of the lorry. Because you could drop a barrel on a straw-filled sack with care, and then we had a cellar, a flap in the side of the cellar, back of the side of the cellar, to wheel barrels down into the cellar. The flap lifted up, and you could take crates in and roll beer barrels down the slope, and then they sat on proper barrel racks, you know, ready for when they wanted using. You had to steady them up, you know, stop. The beer was all churned up driving along a lorry and being thrown off a lorry and whatever, so he couldn't use it straight away. It had to settle. And of course right at the bottom of the barrel is all the dregs and stuff. So there we are. I was in charge of the cellar, and we'd been off to Spalding to get this beer, and the lorry got back, and it got duly delivered back to Fred Swain with due thanks. Just next to us in the yard nearer Boston was the Risdale family. There's the old man, the father, and Jack and Malcolm were the two sons who ran the farm. Dad used to come into the pub a lot, spend some time in the morning talking to my mother. I suppose he was retired, you know. Malcolm used to have an Austin Somerset pickup with two black Labrador dogs in the back. Jack, didn't see much of Jack. Jack lived a bit further away up the road towards Friskenay. Eventually, you know, he went to live in Gunby Hall. So that was Risdale's. Just next to Risdale's, going down the road towards Boston, was Pop Lee's Garage, Austin dealers. So Lee's Garage, and that's where I first saw Cooper racing cars. at the same time with the rear engines. So, and across the road from Lee's garage was Dr. B's, the doctors. A bit before my time there, Dr. B used to have his transport was horses and traps, and his stableman or horseman or whatever at one time was Harry Ranson, who went from Dr. B to work for Balderston Stud at Frithville, just north of Boston, where they used to have Shire horses travelling round, stallions, travelling round to farms to serve the mares so the farmers could produce young stock. So Harry Ranson, R-A-N-S-O-N, worked for Balderston's after Dr. B's at Wrangle, and then he went on to London to work for Young & Co, and he was the most famous horseman that Young & Co ever had. There's no horses there now, of course, unfortunately. So there we are, a bit of a reminiscence there about Wrangle, Boston, the main road to Skegness, and collecting beer from Soames's at Spalding. Oh yeah, I think that same winter we had a bad winter. I'll have to look that up and see, but I do remember my father borrowing a tractor from Fred Swain to go off down to we had a shop in Wrangle in the centre of the village, just past the school, more or less next to the Methodist chapel, and we needed tilly lamps because the electric was off. I think this snowed, and he had to go down there and get some tilly lamps because we got no power. And I do remember at the same time a double-decker bus on the way to Skegness stopped in our pull-in because it couldn't get any further. I'll have to look up this, and I'll put some notes on this video about the bad winter of 1955, was it, something like that, and the double-decker bus stopping in our pull-in, and the passengers had to stay in the pub. My mother was good at roaring fires. I don't suppose the licensing laws applied too much when she was dispensing warming beverages to the poor folks who couldn't go any further in their bus. And I think Lynx Roadcar had to come back and pick them up, take them back to Boston, as Skegness was impassable. Right, that's enough for the moment. Thanks for being with us. Remember, if you like what we're doing, think about giving us a like. How about subscribing to the channel? It helps the channel to grow. It's good for us. That doesn't cost anything. And if you like, also you might like to look at our website and see the books that you can download free of charge, and the audio stories you can download and listen to. Entertaining stuff. But this isn't in it because I've only just thought of this story, which is from the past. I keep dredging up memories from the past, and this is it. Okay, Wrangle, 1955. Cheerio for now.